Hey guys, welcome to the channel and welcome to another episode of Chatter from the Vox. If you don't know what this is by now, where have you been? This is our weekly podcast we do every single week live on Twitch, normally a Sunday or a Monday. If you head over to the Twitch page, it will give you the up-to-date schedule. A little disclaimer, at this very important time, this is the last day on the schedule, so tomorrow, which is Monday the 29th of April, I'll update the schedule for the next month, for May. So it won't be long, and May's schedule will be on there, and you can check that out. Hit follow on Twitch if you want to, and you'll be notified when we go live. And every single Sunday and or Monday we come on and we do a live podcast. We talk about all sorts of stuff, from tournaments, competitive scene, narrative stuff, new rules releases, new rules leaks, channel updates, absolutely anything, FAQs, chapter approved, all that sort of stuff. So if you like that sort of content, if you're interested in that sort of 40k content, then don't forget to click subscribe on YouTube as well. We do put all these videos on YouTube, and we also stick out bat reports. At the moment, we're maintaining 2 bat reports a month minimum, which is quite difficult, but it's good fun at the moment because we're also sticking regular content out on deploymentzone.tv. So you'll see the website linked above me, and if you head over to www.deploymentzone.tv, that's a website that's owned by me and Winters from the YouTube channel Winters SEO, and we stick bat reports on there every single week on a Tuesday, along with big debates and sit-in talks and tips and all kinds of stuff. So don't forget to head on over to that website and check it out for us as well, because you guys that are subscribing are awesome and helping us live the dream. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel on YouTube and follow us on Twitch. We're everywhere. We're on Facebook and Instagram and all sorts of stuff. So come and find us, follow us, and join in part of our community. Whilst talking about the community, don't also forget that we've got a Patreon page. There's a link below on the Twitch page. There's a link below on YouTube, and you can come and join us on Patreon if you want to support the channel. And then you can drop into our Discord, and our Discord is literally full of legends. And April has been an incredible month for new joiners. Loads and loads and loads of new joiners, and they all seem to be really enjoying themselves as well. That's really, really cool. So want to come and join our community? Come and join our community, and we do sometimes talk about the podcasts after, and we talk about them before, and they can be involved in the topic sometimes. And if you saw a couple of weeks ago, we did a community showcase, and that's all for Patreons. On top of which, if you want to come and play us on the channel for battle reports, because I've had a few messages recently on things like Facebook, it's just I don't want to make it a huge selling point, but if you're a patron, you're more likely to be able to come and film, because I just have to give those guys priority because they support us. So it sort of makes sense. Not to say that you can't film if you're not, but you're just more likely to be able to book a slot in. I think that covers all that stuff. Now, normally I'm joined by some amazing co-hosts, Mikey P and Mikey Brom, but they have been at an event all weekend, so they have not joined me tonight. Understandable. 5 games of 40k in 5 days. They played doubles, so although it's 1,800 point games, they have 900 points each. And they've been playing a doubles event at Confrontation in Portsmouth. Check out Confrontation events on Facebook, and they do, I think, minimum 3 40k based tournaments a year. One of them's a doubles, and one of them's called Confrontation Lords of War, which we're going to in a couple of months. And one of them's called just Confrontation, and that is their singles 1,800 point ITC tournament. Although it doesn't use the ITC rules, but it is an ITC registered tournament. So check out Confrontation events, because they do some really, really cool events run by a guy called Ricky, and he's a legend. And the Lords of War's coming soon, and we're going to do an episode on the Lord of War tournament, because I'm really excited by it, because it's just got that little bit of a different twist, which probably takes some of the competitive edge off of it and makes it a lot more fun and a lot more interesting, especially if there's beer involved. So check those guys out as well, because they're awesome. But that means I'm on my own. So I sat at work today, and I was thinking to myself, what on God's earth do I talk about on my own tonight? Because originally Mikey P was saying he was going to come and join me, but he let me down. He let me down, Twitch and YouTube. But he said he was going to join me. So normally we have a sort of a discussion about what we're going to talk about. And then I thought, you know what? I know what's coming soon. The Ynnari Index is coming soon. It's probably a good idea to talk about that, what we think might happen, what we think the changes might be, what we'd like to see perhaps. And I thought, actually, I can do that on my own. I'm an Eldar player anyway. I love Eldar. I love Harlequins. I'm meh about Drukhari. I think it's because everyone's jumped on the Talus and the bomber, the Void Raven bomber bandwagon, so I'm a little bit meh about Drukhari, but I do love Harlequins. I do love Craftworld Eldar. So actually, Ynnari's, with the big release coming soon, or the big sort of index coming soon, was probably a reasonable topic to talk about. And then some legend who clearly doesn't like his job decided to spill the leaks all over the internet today. Hey, so I've got, I think, pretty much every page from the Ynnari Index in front of me, and blurry image from Potato Cam. And it means what we can do tonight is talk about the Ynnari. And we can talk about how they are now going to work in 40k. Now, there is some very upset people in the world because one way of looking at the Ynnari is they have been smashed into oblivion by the nerf bat. And considering how they used to work compared to how they now work, that has definitely happened. They have definitely been smashed into oblivion by the nerf bat. Now, personally, from my own opinion, it was required. And I don't think anyone can really complain as to how heavily perhaps they've been hit. Because as a faction previously, they were all kinds of levels of broken. We've touched on cheese and soup type stuff repeatedly on the channel. And when we talk about soup, we do tend to refer to Loyal 32 from Guard, Knight Castellan, things like Smash Captains or Shield Captains on bikes and stuff. And actually, one of the unwritten, sort of, not unwritten, unspoken about issues in 40k at the moment is Ynnari. And part of that is because they're like legal soup, and there's some interesting changes that have come with the codex now. But not only were they legal soup, they were legal soup that had access to 3 different stratagems and 3 different sets of warlord traits and all that kind of stuff. So there's lots of stuff out there about how to fix Ynnari, and people said remove the craft world traits and such like, so you don't get the access to the stratagems and relics, and replace that with a new keyword, and therefore with that new keyword you would have associated warlord traits and associated relics, associated psychic powers, etc. So it was... that was what was muted as being one of the biggest fixes, along with other things. Wait a minute, I've just had a message from he who should not be named. But yeah, that was one of the associated fixes that was... it's Mr. Winter saying he's not going to come and join me. It was one of the associated fixes that people were sort of throwing around there, was basically to fix the issue that they had access to all that extra stuff. Which was definitely right. But... there was other muted fixes out there as well. So one of people's biggest issues was Soul Burst and how Soul Burst worked. And I thought kind of that if we got rid of the access to stratagems, relics, warlord traits, and all that kind of stuff that exists for each individual codex, and slim them down to having access to one set of them because they're Ynnari, maybe Soul Burst wouldn't be too bad. Maybe. But I still thought it was quite strong and quite powerful, and it needed a rework. There were some other muted ideas out there, so perhaps a power from pain type table. So depending on how many units have been killed on the battlefield, the ability for Ynnari developed rather than just instantly I get to go again. And I wasn't sure where I sat on how to fix that as an issue. GW have fixed it. They have changed it, so we'll talk about that in a minute. Just to refer to a couple of comments on the stream, someone's already said, was it really that quiet? As in, where is it? Was it really that much of an unspoken thing? What I meant was on this channel, whenever we refer to soup, we always refer to the Guard Space Marine Knight thing because it was one of the most prevalent. But yeah, Ynnari was doing really well. Ynnari was doing very well in tournament scenes, and you would see detachments with not Wind Riders, what they call Shining Spears and Reapers and all kinds of stuff mixed in together. So they've changed how it works. So rather than talking too much about what we thought was going to happen and what I wanted to happen, I've got the rules in front of me, so we might as well just talk about those. So one of the first things that's the massive jump out, punch me in the face thing for me, which actually talking about it on the SN WhatsApp chat today, some people didn't pick up on straight away. And actually Darren, who's in the chat right now, he picked up on it quite quickly. When I looked into it a bit more depth, he was right. And that is the fact that it now says if your army's battle force, you can include your Vrain, Vizark, or the other one. What's the other one called? The Incarn in any Craftworld, Harlequins, or Drukhari detachment. At which point you can choose for them to become Ynnari, or you can choose for them to remain Craftworlds or Drukhari or Harlequins. So it says specifically in any Craftworld, Harlequins, or Drukhari detachment, provided that the attachment does not include any of the following units: any Aldari named characters, any Mandrakes, the Avatar of Cain, Solitaire, or any Homunculus Covenants units. This is an interesting choice. So basically, you can add the 3 Ynnari characters into a craft, or one of the 3 Ynnari characters into a Craftworld detachment, whether it be a battalion or a wind or a outrider or whatever, or to a Harlequin detachment or to a Drukhari detachment. However, you can't include the units we've covered or named characters. Now, this is one of the things I have a very minor problem with, not because of power or competitiveness, but because of fluffness. Because of the way the fluff works for the Ynnari. Because, for example, Eldrad, Lilith, a lot of the Phoenix Lords were definitely present as part of the Ynnari throughout the Fall of Beltan, etc. Darren picked up on this today. So they were all present in the fluff. However, now you can't take Eldrad in a Ynnari detachment. As far as a strength thing goes, Eldrad's an incredible unit himself. So I get it. I get kind of why you can't. And normally these characters are bound to a specific craft world. So if you it then makes a keyword change that happens later on more difficult if you include, say, Eldrad, perhaps. I think they could have worked around it. It upsets me because the fluff was that they were involved, and now there's no way for them to be involved in a Ynnari detachment. They could still be involved in an army that includes Ynnari, but then it soups, because then it becomes a Ynnari detachment and an Eldari detachment, for example. Now, with a lot of events and places going away from allowing you to soup with multiple different factions, I assume the way it will be ruled is that if you change your faction to a Ynnari faction because you've chosen to put one of those 3 characters in and then change them to Ynnari, then you can't then take an Eldari detachment because that's a separate faction. So that's how I assume it's going to be ruled. It makes sense, right? So we've got a situation where you can take these 3 and then you can choose to keep them as Craftworld, as Drukhari, as Harlequins. It does then say if Yvraine, Vizark or the Incarn is included in a Craftworld, Harlequins or Drukhari detachment, you can choose for that detachment to remain Craftworld, Harlequins or Drukhari detachment for the detachment, or for that detachment to become a Ynnari one. So that's basically saying you can choose either or. You can choose to become Ynnari. If you choose to remain as Craftworlds, Harlequins or Drukhari, then the 3 characters can be included in that detachment without preventing the other units from the following detachment abilities: Path of War, Craftworld Attributes, Vanguard of the Dark City, Raiding Force, Drukhari, or something, or I can't read it, it's Potato Cam, Defenders of the Black Library, Mask Form. So basically all your normal sort of chapter tactics, you keep all those, and these characters don't stop you from having those. You get those traits still for the rest of your army. So if you're taking an Ulthway detachment of Eldar, although you can't have a named character in it like Eldrad because you've got one of the 3 from the Ynnari, you will still get the Ulthway bonus. You'll still get the 6-up Feel No Pain. If you take it in one of the masks from Harlequins, you'll keep their mask bonus. You don't lose it. The Vizark or Incarn or Yvraine do not get the benefit of any of those attributes themselves, which is kind of expected, right? You didn't think they were going to suddenly get a 6-up Feel No Pain from being Ulthway, because they're not Ulthway. You also don't get to use stratagems to affect it as a Ynnari units from the army has the Ynnari keyword blast. Well, what we're reading here is a different part altogether, actually. It's gone to this next part. So, if you choose for the detachment to become Ynnari, then all units in the detachment gain the Ynnari keyword, and they lose... note that this is a faction keyword, so that becomes their faction keyword, and that's important as to how certain things interact with keywords, obviously. So the detachment is at that point no longer considered to be Craftworld, Harlequins or Drukhari, and as so cannot use Craftworld's, Harlequins or Drukhari detachment ability, stratagems, warlord traits, relics, psychic powers and tactical objectives, respectively. Also note, you cannot use Craftworld's, Harlequins or Drukhari stratagems or psychic powers to affect Ynnari units from your army, even though they may have the appropriate keyword. E.g., you cannot use Craftworld stratagems to affect as a Ynnari unit from your army that has the Ynnari keyword. You basically, so this stops things like Doom from being a problem. So now anything that affects Azayani, etc., will not affect them if you have the Ynnari keyword. In addition, all Ynnari units replace every instance of Craftworld, Cabal, Witch Cult, Mask, or whatever with the appropriate keyword from the table below. And it basically says Craftworld becomes Reborn Eldari, and Cabal becomes Reborn Drukhari, and Mask becomes Reborn Harlequin, etc. And that becomes their new keyword. Now, the interesting thing to read from this as well is that not only is it saying that you lose Doom and Guide and all that kind of stuff for Ynnari units, and you lose stratagems such as one of the most popular ones, for example, was the Simhan one, which allowed you to move, advance, and then charge. And people do that with Shining Spears as Ynnari, and doing the charge, killing something soul bursting out of the way because you add another move. A massively popular tactic. Can't do that because you don't get to use that Simhan stratagem anymore, because you lose the Simhan trait altogether, and you lose the Simhan keyword. You essentially lose access to anything if your detachment is Ynnari that is in the Craftworld Codex, with the exception of the datasheet itself. So you don't get any of the additional stuff, which is quite interesting. Like I said, one of the biggest nerf bats to them is that they lose things like Doom. Doom's huge because it affects Azayani units, and this is specifically saying you don't get that anymore, you lose that. One thing that people haven't picked up on when noting this new rule change is at no point does it say you can mix and match Aeldari, Drukhari or Harlequins in one detachment. So now, although a Ynnari army, I believe, would be able to have 3 different detachments, all with different sort of keywords as such. So you can have a Ynnari detachment that's a battalion that's a Reborn Aeldari, and you could have a Ynnari detachment that's an Outrider, which is a Reborn Mask, and you could have a Ynnari detachment which is a Spearhead with all the heavies, which would be Reborn Drukhari. You can do that because they're all Ynnari, so they have that common keyword. What you can't do is have a Ynnari battalion that has an Archon HQ, Guardians as your troops choices, God knows, Ravagers as your heavy support, etc. You can't do that anymore. That's gone. So they've destroyed that internal detachment soup. That's binned. I think that's a massive positive in my opinion. How that works with regards to fluff, honestly, I don't know. But you cannot get a Ynnari detachment that is more than simply Craftworld Elder. You can't then put Harlequin troops in. It just doesn't allow you to do it. And because you replace certain keywords, i.e. Craftworlds with Reborn Aeldari, and you replace Cabal with Reborn Drukhari, they're then 2 different keywords, so you can't mix them in one detachment, which is really interesting. So now you are massively restricted to how you can build. I know I can see the chat and Darren's arguing me. Sorry, Darren, you are wrong. I've dug into this a lot this afternoon. I was really bored at work. And what they're saying is you have a detachment of Craftworld, you put a character in, you choose for them to be Ynnari, they then regain the keyword, i.e. Reborn Aeldari. You cannot give Drukhari, for example, Reborn Aeldari, therefore they cannot soup in one detachment as per single faction rules. Simple as that. You cannot mix and match. That's huge. And it's important. I mean, you still can soup in the sense that you can take, like I said, a Reborn Drukhari Spearhead, for example, and a Reborn Aeldari battalion. So you can do that. So you can soup that way. But you still have to now pay the normal sort of, I suppose, taxes, people would call it, to build that particular detachment within its own subcodex. Complex, I know. Stick with me. But basically, they're removing you souping within a single detachment, which I think is really positive. No longer can you take all the important Drukhari and Harlequin stuff, for example, and just bolt on some Shining Spears. You're going to have things like Guardians if you want Shining Spears, or Rangers if you want Shining Spears. I think that's really important. I think that's really cool. Abilities. If your army's battle forged, all troop units in the Ynnari detachment, excluding super heavy auxiliary detachments, reclaim the galaxy ability. In addition, if your army's battle forged, all Ynnari detachments, excluding super heavy, gain strength from death. Strength from death is so different. Allies of the Reborn allows you to take beasts, incubi, scourge units in Ynnari detachments. They don't block you from gaining your normal abilities. They don't block you from gaining strength from death. They just don't benefit themselves, which is important because it means you get opposite. I mean, still you don't get homunculus covens, but you get access to extra stuff. Now, reclaim the galaxy is essentially standard Battleforge. So I'm not going to go into it. It's the same that occurs everywhere, but it's your standard Battleforge. Now, one of the big changes, one of the massive changes is strength from death. So if you don't know how Ynnari works in 8th edition 40k, first of all, where have you been? Because it's a huge problem that's plagued us for ages. And how strength from death used to work is if something died within a certain range of your unit, friend or foe, that unit could choose to soul burst. Soul burst was horrendous. Basically, the unit could choose to perform an action. So it could move, or it could shoot, or it could fight, or it could cast a psychic power. You could only do one of each of those types per turn. and only each unit can only do one soul burst action, but you're getting free stuff in an opponent's turn. So if an opponent killed a unit of yours that was next to a unit of yours, that unit it was next to could soul burst, and it could do something. It could be that you're sat next to a unit of 9 scatter laser jet bikes and you kill 5 rangers perhaps, and those scatter laser jet bikes could then shoot in your turn. Insanely powerful when you consider you can do that every turn for free if they manage to kill something. Same as the Shining Spears. One of the big popular moves, as I've said, was to charge them in the first turn, because you could make a first turn charge, annihilate what you hit, and then that Shining Spear unit itself would soul burst and move. And considering how fast Aeldari jetbox can move, standard is about 14 odd inches plus a 6-inch auto advance, they could jump 20 inches out of the way and go, we've killed you and you can't fight us back. Look how fast we are. See you later. Bye. We're off. Insanely powerful. Too powerful, I think, in my opinion. You get free smites out of it. You get all sorts of stuff. It was just so good. So I thought they would look at reworking it or changing it. No, they've completely changed it. This system is nowhere near the same, which is positive because it was a bad system before. It is nowhere near the same now. Strength from Death is really, really different, and I think Strength from Death is one of those things that people have whinged about a lot. I'm going to go on record as saying, actually, I love it. I love the new Ynnari rules. I love Strength from Death, the way it works. I think it's going to massively change the way people play Ynnari. And those people that have gone out there and net list and bought stuff straight away based on what's currently super strong for Ynnari are going to be upset, and it's going to hurt them a little bit, and that sucks. But that's part of what happens, I think, in modern day 40k when you play the new hot stuff. Is you buy something, and potentially it's going to sting you because they might nerf it. So Strength from Death, as soon as any unit is destroyed, friend or foe, any unit is destroyed, all units from your army with this ability benefit from soul burst actions until the end of the turn. Whilst a unit is benefiting from soul burst actions, it always fights first in the fight phase, even if it didn't charge. If a model that is benefiting from soul burst actions made a charge move this turn, or already has an ability that allows it to always fight first in the fight phase, then whilst it is benefiting from a soul burst actions, you also add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made with melee weapons by that model. If the enemy has units that made a charge move this turn or have abilities that allow them to fight first, you alternate, so standard sort of stuff. And instantly made me think of Harlequins. Ynnari Harlequins now are really good. They're hitting on potentially 2s all over the place. What it does say is that you need a unit to be killed, and it could be one of your units, it could be one of the enemy units, and then for the whole turn, you get Soul Burst. It does mean that if you kill a unit in turn 1 and don't make the charge, and in turn 2 you don't kill a unit and then you make the charge, you've lost Soul Burst. It's only active for the turn. What's interesting is the way it's worded as well. I don't know how this is going to work necessarily, but it also says all units from your army with this ability benefit from soul burst actions until the end of the turn. What's important there is it doesn't say battle round. So, if you go second and your opponent kills a unit of your army, you can, in their fight phase, go first, or if you've already got the ability to get +1 attack. In your turn, it resets. Because it says turn, it doesn't say battle round. So you then have to kill something in your turn, either in the shooting phase or the psychic phase, to get this benefit in the fight phase. You can, of course, kill something in the fight phase and then get the benefit for all the other stuff in your army that's fighting. But importantly, it doesn't last for the battle round, it only lasts for the turn. Now, this potentially is meaning that your opponent is being punished a lot less for killing your stuff. So the way that Soul Burst used to work essentially meant that if I killed your thing and you were Ynnari, I could be punished for killing your thing. And this kind of takes away from that now. You don't get punished as badly. If you kill one of my units and then charge me in combat, I'm going to fight you first. But let's be fair, there's plenty of stuff in 40k, / demons, etc. that get to fight first. It's not that game breaking. It gives you a bonus for having a unit died. It's quite fluffy, it's quite narrative. But you don't now, as an opponent to Ynnari, get heavily punished for killing something in the fight phase or killing something in the shooting phase or however it happens. You don't get heavily punished. So I think that's really important. It also means that as the Ynnari player, when you hit your turn, you are encouraged to go and kill something to activate Strength from Death. And the other important thing for Strength from Death, it says that everything benefits from it that's got the keywords, which means that you don't have to worry about stupid 3, 6, 9-inch bubbles. Everything just gets it because something's died. So you fly forward and blow up a transport, for example, across the whole table, everything's empowered by Strength from Death. I think it's narrative. I think it's really cool. I think it changes the way you'll see people playing Eldar and Space Elves. It can make Wraith Guard more viable with axes and swords. It can make Harlequins even stronger. It can make Banshees better. I just think it's better all round. I really like it. It isn't as strong. It isn't as competitive. It's nowhere near as strong, but it is good. I think there's no one out there that I know that I think will complain about the way this is now. It's just much better. Maybe you think differently. Maybe you think it's so bad that you just don't think you're going to use it anymore. But I don't know. I like it. Obviously, we've got the 3 characters that's involved in the index. I'm not going to read through those. Most people know what they are anyway. Then we've got relics, warlord traits, stratagems, psychic powers. I don't think I've got the psychic powers up, actually. Oh, no. Have I got the psychic powers? I'm clicking away now to try and find the psychic powers. But I don't think I've got them. Psychic powers, where are you? I don't seem to have the psychic powers at the moment. I'll have to have a look quickly in a second to see if I can find them. But we've got all these new things now, so we're going to try and find something to read to you. Should we start with relics? Let's start with relics. I think that's probably one of the more boring ones at the moment. Just a quick check on the comments. If you want to win, you play Imperium Soup anyway. Eldar just Space Elves. Banshees Banshees do need the help. Banshees are one of my most favourite aspects, and no one uses them, including myself, because they're a little bit pants. Right. Relics of Ynnari. So they've got their own relics. Now, I wanted them to have their own relics, warlord traits and psychic powers, and I'll go on record as saying they're not bent, but that I still think they're really good, and I think there's some nasty combos in there, which is important because they needed to still be decent enough. From my own personal perspective, I'm actually tempted to look at Ynnari again, because I just don't think they're so out of shape, bent, broken now that people are going to look at you and go, oh, Ynnari. I just think they're a lot more fun, and they allow your opponent to interact more in the game, and that's important. We were talking about this in Discord the other day, and sometimes some of the worst armies are armies where your opponent can't interact in certain phases of the game, and Ynnari could cause opponents to not want to interact in certain phases because of what might happen to them if they did, and that's all gone, I think, so this is important. And we go on to relics. Now, the first one is the one I want to stick on a Harlequin Troop Master, I think they're called, immediately, because it's just really cool. And it's called the Hungering Blade. Let me zoom in on the picture. So the Hungering Blade basically replaces a power sword, and it's +3 strength, -3 AP, and 2 damage. That's amazing on a Harlequin Troop Master, when you consider that a Troop Master hits on 2s and rerolls failed to wounds. So that's incredible. Each unmodified wound of a 6 made for an attack this weapon inflicts a mortal wound, in addition to normal damage. That's a vilely good weapon for a Harlequin type model. I think that's really cool. So I would love to use that straight away, to be honest with you. I quite like that one. But obviously there's other relics out there that are actually quite strong as well. So I read that straight away and said, I want to use that. I want to use that one straight away. Then you go on to the next one, Song of Ynnari. Model with a shuriken pistol, so it replaces a shuriken pistol. 18-inch range, pistol 3, strength 5, I think it says, AP -1, 1 damage. So it's like a shuriken pistol, but much better. Each time you make a wound roll of a 6+ for this weapon, the attack is resolved with an AP of -3, so normal shuriken. Each time an attack is made with this weapon, slays an enemy model, the target unit suffers a -1 from its leadership characteristic until the end of the turn. So it's just a really good shuriken pistol. Not bad. I like it. It's fluffy. You'll see it on characters, but it's not disgusting. You've got Mirror Gaze, subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made target the bearer. That's awesome. And not is it awesome, it just says subtract 1 from hit rolls made for attacks that target the bearer. Not ranged, just hit rolls. So it counts in combat. That's really cool. And much better as a relic than an army-wide buff, looking at you, Latok. Then we've got Soul Snare. Soul Snare's interesting. I don't know how much I like it or not, because it's once per game, and I'm always a bit meh with once per game relics. I like a special relic that a character carries that has more interaction in a 5, 6, 7 turn game, but it's okay. Once per game, instead of firing a ranged weapon, in the shooting phase, the bearer can throw the soul snare. If they do so, select one enemy unit within 6 inches and visible to the bearer, and roll 1d6. You've got to be within 6 inches. On a 1, nothing happens. 2 to a 5, the enemy suffers d3 mortal wounds and the bearer regains the same number of wounds. On a 6, the enemy suffers d6 mortal wounds and the bearer regains all of their lost wounds. It's cool if it works, but you're talking about a once per game relic that could roll a 1. I don't think you'll see it, just because the others are better. The Lost Shroud, this is really cool, especially for Harlequin or actually any Eldar characters. I like this for example, Farseer on Jetbike, if I made him into an Ynnari character, because Farseers on Jetbikes already have a stupid number of wounds. They already have 7 wounds, which is 2 more than a Space Marine captain. But they have a 4-up invulnerable save like a Space Marine captain. They are only toughness 4, my Jetbike elf, but again, same as a captain. This makes him even dirtier in my mind. All damage suffered by the bearer is halved, rounding up. So that's the same as Abaddon or I think Calgar's strength. In addition, roll a d6 each time this model loses a wound, and on a 5+, that wound is not lost. So he halves all damage coming in on him, and he gets a 5+ feel no pain for the stuff that he does suffer. I think that's crazy good. I think that's an amazing relic to be putting on things like Bike Seers. I do think that's really, really powerful. And then you've got Khorog High's Locket. Each time an enemy unit is destroyed by an attack made by the bearer, add 1 to the bearer's move and attack characteristics for the remainder of the battle. Again, something that could be really, really cool on something like a Troop Master, because he just gets stronger and stronger and stronger. So I like that. He's probably the one that I think is the best combat option for Eldar or Harlequins as a HQ choice, who can take relics. So that's why I keep referring to him. I just don't think there's much else out there that would be that good with that particular relic. But I do like it. I think it's pretty good. And then we move on to Warlord traits. So they've got 6 Warlord traits, like every other faction, of course. Interestingly, the named characters have a named Warlord trait. So we'll go through the named ones at the end, but we'll read the Warlord traits out first so we don't spoil it. So, Lord of Rebirth is the first one. The Warlord regains 1 lost wound at the start of each battle round. In addition, each time this Warlord loses a wound, roll a dice on a 5+. That wound is not lost. That's really good. And actually, if you put that on someone like the Incarn then would be able to generate a wound a turn. So I liked it. But like I said, you can't do that because the Incarn's got a set Warlord trait. But I do like it. Again, I'm looking at my Bike Seer, and if I don't take the half damage one, I might pop this on him, because otherwise both are given a 5+ feel no pain. Saying that, it wouldn't hurt. But imagine a Bike Seer that takes half damage, so 2-shot Hell Blasters take it down by, 3 wounds because he half damage, and then he gains 1 back automatically. That's hilarious. So I do like that. I think that's a cool trait. And it makes the squishy Eldar a little bit more strong and a little bit sort of more resilient. We've then got Warden of Souls. Whilst the Warlord is benefiting from Soul Burst actions, add 1 to its attacks and strength characteristics. That's pretty cool. Add 1 to its strength characteristics and 1 to its attacks characteristics. Put that with the crazy sword. You could end up with a strength 7, strength 8 Eldar with a power sword at AP -3 and 2 damage each that hits on 2s, which is incredible. So I do like that. That's not too bad at all. Obviously, it's add 1 to hit rolls as well. And it does say add 1 to its attacks. Well, not attacks rolls, sorry, not hit rolls, sorry. Add 1 to its attack rolls and strength characteristics. So, again, you've got a Troop Master with that sword. And how many attacks are Troop Masters rocking? I think it's 5 base. And with this one, you've got 6 base. And it becomes strength 4. With the sword, it becomes strength 7. That's really cool. We like that one. A Walker of Many Pasts. You can reroll 1 hit roll or wound roll made for this Warlord each turn. That's cool because it's 3 command points basically. You're getting a hit roll. You can reroll 1 hit roll or wound roll. So I assume they're separate. I don't know how it works, if that's the same as, for example, Salamanders, who get to do both. But you get to reroll one or the other, which is 3 command points essentially. In addition, if your army is Battleforged, whilst the Warlord's on the battlefield, roll a d6 each time you spend a command point, or to use a stratagem. On a 5+, the command points are immediately refunded. Obviously, that's nerfed a little bit by the command point farming thing, but yeah, you can gain them back. For me, who's running something like 5 command points for an outrider detachment. That could be really useful. And I don't tend to get that much benefit from the Simon trait, so this now tempts me to lean towards Ynnari, maybe. That's something I'm going to do soon, of course. Fear the Grave. Enemy units must subtract 1 from the leadership characteristic whilst within 6 inches of this warlord. They must subtract 2 instead during any turn in which an enemy unit was destroyed by an attack made by this warlord. So, leadership debuff. Not amazing on its own, but when you include other things that you now have access to, including Hemlocks and Spirits, not Spirit Seers, what are they called? Darren, what are these psychers called for Harlequins? Please tell me. When you include those, you start to be able to stack some serious leadership debuffs as well, which is important. So on its own, maybe not amazing, but together it's not too bad at all. I think... Is he? No. Okay. Favoured of You Need is the 5th one. Each time this warlord piles in or consolidates, they can move 6 inches instead of 3. Probably won't see that one very often. And then Master of Death. Each modified hit roll of a 6 made for an attack with this melee weapon by this warlord scores 2 hits instead of 1. That's really cool. So 2 hits instead of 1 every time you roll a hit roll of a 6, and you can combine that with the sword, which says each unmodified wound roll of a 6 made for attack with this weapon inflicts 1 mortal wound. You're kicking out potentially with 6s bucket loads of attacks, bucket loads of hits. It's a really nice place to be for a Ynnari character that wants to fight, and this is encouraging us to fight, which is good because there's too many gun lines out there already anyway. Hey. Thanks for the subscription as well, Denarian87. If Yvraine is your warlord, it must be given the Favoured of You Need warlord trait. Favoured of You Need is the one that gives you the additional pile-in. That's pants, so you can consolidate 6 instead of 3. It's not horrendous, but when you consider the others I've read out, it's nowhere near as good. The Incarn gets Wardens of Souls. So the Incarn gets the add 1 to attacks and strength characteristics while benefiting from Soul Burst for the Incarn. That's really good for the Incarn. I like that one. And the Vizark gets the Master of Death. So he gets the one at the end whereby 6s to hit with melee weapons score 2 hits instead of 1. So not bad. It means he's got some more abilities in combat. But the warlord traits are overall good. There's no massive standouts. There's a couple of really good ones, perhaps even borderline quite strong. There's 1 or 2 that are a bit meh, but on the whole, I think they're pretty decent rack of warlord traits. So I don't think many people will complain too much about that. Now, I have my mobile telecommunications device in front of me because John has been kind enough to send me the psychic powers because I don't think I've copied them across on my computer. So I'll look down a little bit now. So I'll read you guys the psychic powers. But we've got 6 Ynnari psychic powers, pretty standard. 6 of everything, obviously. Gaze of You Need. So Gaze of You Need, I think, was kind of like a smite type thing before, but I can't remember. Warp charge value of 6, so not bad. If manifested, select 1 enemy unit that is within 18 inches and visible, so very much like smite. On a 1, the unit suffers 1 mortal wound. On a 2 to a 5, they suffer D3. On a 6, it suffers D6 mortal wounds. So that's quite cool. It's basically a smite, but it costs you an extra warp charge to cast it, and then you roll a dice, and then that will tell you how many mortal wounds you do. So not too bad. We quite like that one. Storm of Whispers, warp charge value of 6 again. If manifested, roll 3d6 for each enemy unit within 6 inches. For each result of 6, the unit being rolled for suffers 1 mortal wound. So any unit within 6 inches of you roll 3 dice, and any 6s cause a single mortal wound to that unit. Potentially a mortal wound bomb, but you're relying on 6s. Not bad, but not perhaps the best. Word of the Phoenix. This one got kicked in the nuts. So Word of the Phoenix you used to cast, and it allows you to do a Soul Burst even if something hadn't died. And Soul Burst used to be really strong, as we've covered. Soul Burst died, so it makes sense that Word of the Phoenix is different. Warp charge value of 5, so it's cheap. If manifested, select 1 friendly Ynnari infantry or Ynnari biker unit within 18 inches of the psyker. 1 model in the unit regains D3 lost wounds. If no models in that unit have lost any wounds, then the unit has suffered 1 or more casualties, and 1 model's returned to that unit in coherency with 1 remaining. Yeah, we're not going to dally on that one for too long, but it's not that much of a... You're not going to write home about that psychic power, right? It's pretty toss. When you consider that a lot of the units out there are sort of 2 wounds or 1 wound anyway, I do think it could be quite good for things like Wraith Guard. to put a Wraith Guard back on the board is quite strong. Toughness 6, 3-up armor save. It's not horrendous for those, but when you consider what Warden of the Phoenix used to do, that's a massive change, right? We've got Unbind Souls. Unbind Souls is very, very good if you're running Ynnari the way they're now trying to encourage you to run Ynnari. So warp charge value of 6 if manifested. Select one enemy unit within 18 inches of the Psyker. Until the start of your next psychic phase, you can reroll wound rolls for attacks made with melee weapons by Ynnari models from your army that target that enemy unit. It's Doom, but it's Doom for melee only. And that's why I like it. Because it's not Doom where everything that shoots gets to reroll wounds. It's Doom for melee only. I think it's a warp charge cheaper than Doom because Doom's 7 and this is 6. But it is a slightly shorter range. It's 18 inches instead of 24. But this is trying to encourage you to run up and punch the enemy. They want this to be a combat-based army, clearly, because of the way it all works now. Faydan's just said, so Word of the Phoenix is now Space Marine Apothecary. It's exactly that. Apart from it costs you warp charge and you might perils. So shield, if you need, is the 5th power. Warp charge value of 7, so one of the more expensive ones. Friendly Ynnari units have a 5+ invulnerable save while they're within 6 inches of the Psyker. So actually, I misread that earlier. I didn't realise, but this is a bubble. So if manifested, until your next psychic phase, friendly Ynnari units have a 5+ invulnerable save while they're within 6 inches of the Psyker. That's really, really good. Really, really good. So warp charge and invulnerable is 7 instead of the rest at 5 or 6. So whilst that power's active, anyone within 6 inches of your Psyker has a 5 of invuln. I like that. That's really cool. Perhaps not so great for things like Harlequins, who have already got an invulnerable save. People like Banshees and stuff, they're going to quite like that. I can even see them sat with something like Dark Reapers, for example. But if you're taking Dark Reapers and not using Doom, you're doing it wrong. Then Ancestor's Grace, which is the last one. Warp charge value of 5. Select a Ynnari unit within 8 inches of Psyker until the start of your next psychic phase. Reroll hit rolls of 1 for attacks made by that unit. Like that one. So I think if you can take 2 psychic powers, often you'll see Unbind Souls and Ancestor's Grace. So reroll 1s to hit and reroll failed wounds. That's really cool. I quite like it. So yeah, I'm a fan of those psychic powers on the whole. Again, there's some that are better than others. The 6s to wound and the apothecary one. The apothecary, if you're running lots of wraiths constructs, perhaps it's good. Perhaps. But it's not as good as rerolling to hits, rerolling to wounds, which is what people want in 8th edition. 8th edition is not only the king of numbers, as we've seen, and it's about how many units can shoot and what they can shoot at, but 8th edition is also about the king of rerolls. If you can stack rerolling to hits and you can stack rerolling to wounds, what you're essentially doing is increasing your numbers. And it's a game that revolves around numbers more than it revolves around... there's people out there now that are massively successfully doing more damage with a squad of 10 intercessors shooting at a tank than they are with a las cannon. To me, that's the wrong way round. I've got no problems with lower strength weapons wounding things like tanks, like bolt guns wounding tanks, or even las guns finding a mark and winning a tank. But when you've got 10 veteran intercessors who are Indomitus Crusade veterans, who are managing to do more damage to, say, I don't know, for argument's sake, a fire prism than a las cannon can, I think something's a little bit wrong there. I don't like that. But that's because rerolls are a thing. And if you put those 10 veterans who are kicking out, I think, 40 shots at range if they stand still because of the new Bolter Discipline rule, and then you put a Primarch nearby that just so happens to let you reroll all failed to hits and all failed to wounds, they are kicking out a lot more damage than your anti-tank stuff is because it's just a lot more reliable. So I think those 2 powers, the one that allows you to reroll to wounds in melee and the one that allows you to reroll to hit rolls of a 1, I think they're going to be quite important. I think you'll probably see those. They're the ones I think I instantly drew myself to if building a Ynnari force now. I like the idea of Ynnari detachment of Harlequins supported by a Ynnari detachment of Craftworld Elder. How that exactly looks at the moment, I don't know. But I'm liking the idea of sticking things like Banshees in and maybe even striking Scorpions and just giving... an opponent something to think about when they're being charged by space elves who are historically very squishy and die quite fast, and I'm going, yep, I've got loads of attacks and I hit you on 2s, and it could fall apart massively, but that's the fun of it, right? Anyway, let's move on to stratagems, because stratagems is important because we've lost access to all other stratagems. So no longer can Ynnari players vect people or use linked fire, etc., etc. So let's have a look at what they've got now. So we've got 2 pages of stratagems. So they've not got none. They've not got like 3 or 4. They've got 2 pages. The first one is Artifacts of Death. Not going to go into it. Extra relics. The second one that I'm reading is Whispering Spirits. Use this stratagem when an enemy unit takes a morale test whilst it's within 1 inch of any Ynnari units from your army, but before the test is taken, subtract 2 from the enemy's leadership characteristic until the end of the phase. Stack that with the other relic, I think it was, we saw, and with the Hemlock and with the Shadow Seer's abilities, etc. You can do some serious leadership debuffing now, and there is a potential now that you could end up at -5, 6, 7, perhaps even 8. I think if you stack everything together in the right way, you need a lot to happen. You'll probably need a Death Jester, etc. I think Darren ran me through one before. He got it to sort of -7 or -8. But that's a massive load of leadership debuffing, which you can kill then perhaps 1 model in a unit to force a leadership that they would normally automatically pass, and with the right buff surrounding it, they could lose 8 or 9 models. That's really important. There's 2 command points, by the way. A lot of these are 2 command points, which is interesting. They seem to be setting maybe a precedent. I don't know, but a lot of them, you look at it, and in maybe codexes a year ago, there'd be 1 command point, and it wouldn't be too bad. Now they're 2 command points. I think people are starting to find a degree of balance with command points where they go, that actually is worth more. I know they did it with the Knights Codex where they put a load of them up because they were just too strong as a single command point. So next one, also 2 command points you need to net. Use a stratagem at the start of the charge phase. Select 1 Ynnari biker unit from your army. That unit can charge even if it advanced this turn. So that gives your Shining Spears back the ability to move, advance and charge, which is why people used to take Simhan Shining Spears. But Simhan Shining Spears can do it for a single command point. Ynnari Shining Spears have to pay 2. Think that's reasonable because Ynnari Shining Spears are better in combat potentially because they always fight first, and if they charge, they not only fight first, they get a +1 to hit. So I think that's good. Plus they can be supported by, say, a Bike Seer who can then do reroll to hits of 1 and reroll to wounds, and suddenly you've got a Shining Spear unit that's hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, wounding on what they when they're charging strength 6 and wounding on 3s, maybe with 3 full rerolls. That's actually still a very good unit. It's not as bad as it used to be because Soul Burst's gone. So if you go in and kill something, you don't suddenly get to fly 20 inches away and protect yourself. You are committing to the fight, but it's still a really good unit that can charge in and do some serious damage. And like I said, King of Rerolls in 8th edition. We've then got United in Death. Single command point. Use a stratagem at the start of the fight phase. Select 1 Reborn Azayani, Reborn Harlequin, or Reborn Drakari unit from your army. Until the end of the phase, add 1 to the attack's characteristics of these units while they are benefiting from Soul Burst. So, +1 attack whilst benefiting from Soul Burst. Potentially fighting first. Potentially hitting on 2s. It's a single command point. I think it's probably worth it. I like it. Again, think about Harlequins who are rocking 3-4 attacks each with this on, and they're going first, hitting on 2s, potentially rerolling 1s. They've got 5-6 attacks each. Numbers are just so key. They've got caresses or kisses. They're hitting at strength 4 or strength, I think caresses make them strength 5, AP -1 or 2, and 1 or 2 damage each. That's just really good. Darren, you need to start paying me some Harlequins. Inevitable Fate is 2 command points. Use this stratagem at the start of the fight phase. Select 1 enemy unit. Reroll wound rolls for attacks made by melee weapons by Ynnari units that target the unit until the end of the phase. So the exact same as the Psychic Power, but 2 command points instead. So you lose your Psyker, you can still do a reroll to wound buff. Not in range because of your Psyker, you can still do a reroll to wound buff, but it's going to cost you 2 command points. Really interesting. Again, only give you that reroll to wound in melee, so they're pushing you towards melee, which is definitely the right way to go as far as I'm concerned. We've got Acolyte if you need. Use this stratagem before Ynnari Psyker from your army attempts to manifest a psychic power from the Revenant Discipline. Add 3 to the psychic test if any enemy units were destroyed this phase. This is interesting because the way it's worded for me means you're basically going to have to kill a unit with Smite and then use this to get +3 to your next psychic test. But the power that I think I would want +3 for the most is probably Smite. So I don't know how effective this is going to be. Originally I was like, oh amazing, +3 to psychic tests. We have to kill something in that phase, in the psychic phase. And The only thing we've really got as, the only thing that you've really got as a Ynnari player that does any sort of damage in the fight phase is that Mortal Wound bomb, or the very first one, which I can't gaze if you need. So you need gaze if you need to go off, a warp charge value of 6 perhaps, to try and kill something. And don't get me wrong, you roll a 6 of gaze and you're doing d6 more wounds. And then you can maybe get +3 for smite. Maybe that's something to think about. Gaze if you need something, kill a model, 2 models, drop this one, +3 for smite. Much, much, much more likely to get super smite, which is what I'm fishing for basically with that. Reborn together. Use this stratagem at the start of the morale phase until the end of the phase. Add 2 to the leadership characteristic of Ynnari units from your army that are within 6 inches of other friendly Ynnari units. Originally, I was a bit annoyed by this one because there's armies out there that have got a stratagem that allow you to just pass morale. Or they've got buffs like Abaddon to Cultists where you just pass morale. But actually, considering they are just within 6 inches of another Ynnari unit and they get that buff for your whole army, actually that's not too bad then. If you keep your army relatively close together on the whole, operating as a big unit together, then 1 CP, everyone gets +2 to their leadership. That probably could make a big difference in some places. So, Shrine of the Whispering God. Use this stratagem before the battle. Select up to 3 units of Ynnari Incubi from your army. Each of these units gains Strength from Death ability, even though Incubi units cannot normally have the ability. Don't know if that's a big deal. It's 2 command points. I don't think you'll see it. Where's my other stratagems gone? Here we are. A Taste for Death is the next one for a single command point. Use a stratagem when an enemy unit is destroyed as the result of an attack made with a ranged weapon by an Ynnari unit from your army. Add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made with melee weapons for that unit until the end of the turn. This is odd. So basically, this is... I don't know how or when this is ever going to be important. When an enemy unit is destroyed as a result of an attack made with a ranged weapon, so that's shooting phase or Overwatch, then you can add 1 to hit rolls for that units. So maybe fusion pistol wielding Harlequins, perhaps? I guess. Perhaps fusion pistol wielding Harlequins can blow up a transport and then charge into combat and get +1 to hit. But at that point, they've blown up a transport, so they'll get Strength from Death anyway. So, I think the person who made that stratagem was drunk. Because if something's destroyed, if a unit is destroyed, you get add 1 to hit anyway. I don't understand the point in it. Because the second you kill a unit, you get Strength from Death across the whole of your Ynnari army, so you get +1 to hit. With this, you get +2 to hit, potentially. I say that. I mean, I guess, yeah. I suppose the only time this is really massively important is Overwatch, thinking about it. Or perhaps if you're locked up in combat and it's the opponent's fate. No, because then you would be shooting... If you're locked up in combat, it's the opponent's turn. You can't shoot your pistols. But it gives you... I don't know how this is important. Maybe there's more important uses to this. All I'm thinking of is maybe Overwatch would allow me +1 to hit. Or no, Overwatch would allow me to then go first in my opponent's turn. So if I killed their transport or I killed a unit that charged in at me in Overwatch, then they charge me with another unit. I get to go first because that's how Soul Burst works now. And I get the +1 for Taste for Death with a single command point, so I can benefit from both, even though I'm not the charging unit. Perhaps if I'm locked in combat and I kill a character with pistols, because I wasn't charging, I wouldn't normally have gone first. But then with this, but then I get to go first because of Soul Burst, and then with this I get +1 attack as well. Maybe. Yeah, okay, maybe not that bad. Maybe the more I think about it, it's not horrendous, but I just don't think it's amazing. Webway Ambush is your standard Eldar stratagem, so single command point stick something in the webway, 3 command points to put something in the webway. Got to be Ynnari Infantry, Biker, or Beast. Nothing's fancy there. You get to webway strike. It's basically deep striking stuff. Exalted of your need. Use the stratagem before the battle. Select a Ynnari character from your army that is not your warlord and not a named character. Generate 1 warlord trait from the Ynnari warlord traits table for them. This model is only regarded as your warlord for the purpose of the warlord trait. All warlord traits in your army must be different or randomly generated. Reroll duplicates. You can only use the stratagem once. Like that. That's really cool. So you get a second warlord trait somewhere, and we've just seen the warlord traits. So they're pretty good. They're not terrible. So I can now potentially give 2 characters a warlord trait that makes them more survivable. Like that. Big fan. Also means that your warlord's carrying the relic that gives you half damage and 5 up feel no pain. The other one can get the warlord trait that gives you regen a wound and 5 up feel no pain. Suddenly you've got 2 characters like 5 up feel no pain, for example. So that's quite cool for a single command point. Back from the Brink. I like this one a lot. It's 2 command points. The last one, by the way, was a single. It's 2 command points. This is really cool. Use this stratagem when an Ynnari infantry or Ynnari biker character from your army is destroyed. Roll a d6 on a 4+, set that character back up again as close as possible to their previous position and more than 1 inch away from enemy models, with d3 wounds remaining. This stratagem cannot be used on the same character more than once per battle. Basically, you could turn a Farseer into Gullyman, which I think is hilarious. I mean, you get d3 wounds rather than d6 wounds because you're not a fucking Primarch. But I could turn Marai into Gullyman, which is hilarious for 2 command points. So you could finally kill him, and then I could put him back up again. You add that to the Relics and Warlord traits to make them more survivable, and that's hilarious because suddenly you've got a Farseer on a bike that just won't die. The Great Enemy, single command point. Of course, there's going to be one in there about Slaanesh Demons. Use this stratagem when an Ynnari unit from your army is chosen to fight the fight phase. Until the end of the phase, reroll failed to wound rolls for attacks made by models in this unit that target Slaanesh units. Situational because it's Slaanesh. Fluffy, so I like it. Fire and Fade, no different to normal Craftworld Elder. Fire and Fade, 2 command points. Use this stratagem after a Ynnari unit from your army shoots in the shooting phase. If you do so, the unit can immediately move up to 7 inches as if it were the movement phase. It cannot advance upon the move. Unit cannot charge, blah. So normal Fire and Fade. Deadly Misdirection. 2 command points. Use this stratagem when a Ynnari unit from your army falls back. It can still shoot and charge. Cool for some units, I guess, but things that want to fall back and then charge back in are probably Harlequins, and at the moment they keep Rising Crescendo, even though they're Harlequins, because Rising Crescendo is an entry in their data slate, and it's not a Craftworld attribute or anything like that, so they're going to keep Rising Crescendo, so Harlequins don't need it, because they can do that anyway, they can fall back and charge. But still, you can do it on other things, which is important. Maybe Wraith Guard with Flamers and Wraithbone Fists that are more protected in melee, because I don't know. But you can do it. That's the important thing. I suppose it is pretty cool to be able to full Wraith Guard with Flamers out of combat that have been tied up and then flame what's just charged you. You won't worry about charging back in. You're just going to flame them. That's really quite nice, I suppose. Souls from the Strongest. Use this stratagem when the enemy Warlord is destroyed. Cool. Units from your army with a Strength from Death ability benefit from Soul Burst actions for the remainder of the battle, even if no unit has been destroyed during subsequent turns. I quite like this because it encourages you to just go after the enemy Warlord and then you get Soul Burst for the rest of the game. That's really cool. I like that because then you don't have to worry about killing something to get +1 attack or +1 to hit, or to fight first or whatever. You just have it by killing their Warlord. So it encourages you to assassinate the Warlord, which I love. Single command point. And then lightning fast reactions. I'm not going to bore you with lightning fast reactions. We all know what that does from other Eldar books. That's about that. They've obviously got their own set of 6 tactical objectives. Do people want me to go through tactical objectives? Do people care what they are? Do people want me to go through the units data sheets? They may be different. I don't think they are. They look like they're the same to me. But maybe they're this, maybe they are. But who really cares about tactical objectives? They only come up every now and again. So anyway, that's basically a summary of most of what things do. The data sheets are always useful. People do like the idea of data sheets. Interesting is the points, I think. I don't know if they're any different. So your Vrain is 132. This is potato can, people, so it might be a bit wrong. Your Vrain is 132. The Vizuk's 120. The Incarn's 337. 337. That's interesting. The Incarn is decent. Interestingly, all 3 of these characters have an 8-inch move, meaning they keep up with things like Harlequins. The Incarn, 2+ to hit in combat, 2+ to hit for ranged weapons. Strength toughness is 6. 9 wounds. Character 9 wounds. Important, obviously, less than 10. 6 attacks base. Strength, leadership 9. 3 up save. That's cool. Hasn't got a ranged weapon, so I don't know why we care that much about ballistic skill. However, he has a melee weapon, the Sword of Souls, or something it says. Strength to use at AP -4, d6 damage. You can reroll wound rolls for attacks made with this weapon. Really cool. So he's got a beastie sword. He's got 4 up invuln save, strength from death. Inevitable death is the same as before. When you set up the Incarn, you can set him up in hiding or waiting rather than on the battlefield. That's interesting because I think it gives you the option, whereas I don't know if it used to. If it then basically, if the unit's killed or completely destroyed, you can set up the Incarn as close as possible to the position of that unit, but more than 1 inch from all enemy models. The Incarn may not charge on a turn that it does that. Interesting, because the Incarn's a Psyker as well, so something dies, you can pop him up as a Psyker and do things. Summon from death. Each time a unit is destroyed, you can immediately remove the Incarn from the battlefield and set it up again as close as possible to that position of that unit, more than blah blah blah. So same as again, but basically you can drop him around the field, you can pop him around the field, which is what you could do before anyway. Friendly Ynnari units pass morale while they're within 6 inches of the Incarn. In addition, whenever a friendly Ynnari unit within 6 inches of the Incarn loses a wound, roll a d6. On a 6, it's not lost, so he gives a 6 up for a pain buff. And the avatar you need. Each time another Aeldari model is also within 6 inches of the Incarn, roll a d6. On a 4+, the Incarn okay, so basically, if an Aeldari model's killed within range of the avatar you need, roll a 4+, the Incarn regains a lost wound. Not bad. He's a decent model. He's a decent unit. He's okay. But the big thing for me with him is he gets to bob around and do psychic powers. He's good fun to do that. But one of the things he was really good at before was being able to appear and soul burst if something died or whatever, and he can't do that now. So still really good, but 337 points I just think is a bit much for that. He's not bad. He's a good model. He's a good unit. He's a character that can't be targeted. But he wants to make melee. So that can't be targeted thing is only important what's trying to get him into melee. He's still 337 points. I would imagine we'll see that drop. Darren just asked me, do you think you can jump out of combat with his teleport? Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. Second something dies the other side of the board, you can teleport him across the board out of combat, out of any situation. Yvraine, the one that was always the auto-include before, because she gave access to Ynnari, basically. 8-inch move again, weapon skill, ability skill 2, strength toughness 3, wounds 5, attacks 4, leadership 9, save 6. The picture is very, 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 very horrible for this particular character. +1 strength for the sword, AP -2, and D3 damage. Strength from death, 4 up Invan. Add 1 to psychic tests and deny the witch tests for her little familiar. Herald of Need. Basically, when a Aeldari is slain within 6 inches, roll a dice, and she regains 1 wound. If the model was a Psyker, you can generate an additional psychic power from the Revenant discipline. So if a Farseer dies next to her, she can gain a new psychic power on a 4+ if they die. And then there's another Revered Figurehead. This model can basically it allows us access to Aeldari transports, so she can get Aeldari transports, which is important. Obviously, she's a Psyker. Vizark, he's interesting now because he's quite cheap. He's the cheapest Ynnari character. Same stat line as hers, wounds 5, attacks 5, leadership 9, save 3 up. His sword +2 strength, so strength 5, AP -3, D3 damage. And don't forget we've got loads of buffs to do things like reroll, fail to wounds and stuff. Enemy units that suffer any casualties as a result of attacks made from this weapon, subtract 1 from leadership. So you've got leadership buffs as well. A champion of your need. Each time another Aeldari model within 6 inches of the Vizark rolls a d6. On a 4+, the Vizark regains 1 lost wound. If that model was a character, add 1 to his attacks. It's the same. He gains wounds back if things die near him, but he also gains attacks, which is cool if the model was a character that died. So Way of the Blade, reroll hit rolls of 1 for attacks made with melee weapons by friendly Ynnari models within the unit that within 6 inches of the model. This is a really easy way to give reroll to hit rolls of 1 to Harlequins. So Harlequins, make them Ynnari, and they gain the Reborn Harlequins attachment. Put them with a Vizark. He can keep up with them because he's got an 8-inch move as well. And he can go in Aeldari transports, so he can keep up with Harlequins no matter what they do. And he gives a reroll to hit bubble of 1s for Harlequin units within 6 inches, as long as they're Ynnari. Couple that with rerolling fail to wounds because of things like stratagems or whatever. He is a big buffer to the way that they're trying to make this army fight now. A massive buffer with the way they're trying to make this army fight. So Warden of Yvraine. Each time Yvraine loses a wound, whilst the Vizark is wholly within 3 inches, basically you can choose for him to take its dead. 4 shield gives him a vulnerable save, and a Revered Figurehead allows him to jump in transports. That's about it. That's the 3 days. They've only got 3. I'm just not... I think the 2 normal characters, Yvraine and Vizark, at 132 and 120 points, I think they're really cool. I like them. I like the Vizark aura of reroll to hit rolls of 1 for Ynnari models now. I think that's really strong. I think there's enough stuff in here that you could buff up a unit of Banshees and potentially make Banshees interesting, which is a really good thing because you don't see them and they're just such an iconic Eldar unit. Let's not forget that it also buff Dark Eldar stuff. They also buff Harlequins. So there's lots of really cool combos there to make them hit like a train in melee. They'll be glass cannon, I think. They'll hit hard, and if they don't kill what they're attacking, they're going to fall apart. But that reroll to hit of ones is important because that affects not only Harlequins, that also affects things like Wraith Guard. So Wraith Blades and Wraith Guard. You have force axes and shields. You have the potential now. If you do things right, you have the potential now that you can get +1, maybe +2 to hit with your not force axes, but your ghost axes, and you get to reroll ones if you keep a Visarch nearby. That's quite disgustingly good, and they're quite strong, and you've got the ability to potentially buff with a psychic power or with a stratagem to reroll to wounds as well. Wraith Blades could be really interesting. Wraith Blades could be really, really interesting in Ynnari. I think they could be quite a strong choice. We're not going to go through the tactical objectives because that's just a bit tedious. And that's it. That's everything. So we've covered all the Ynnari rules. We've covered all the new stuff. I'm so happy, to be honest with you. I've never in 8th edition really had a massive urge to run Ynnari. I did use them once, I think on DZ, because I wanted to use the Incarn because we have them in the studio, and it was interesting, but Soulburst just seems so disgusting. Soulburst was just ridiculous before. The ability to do something like appear somewhere and then Soulburst closer, or be able to charge with Soulburst in the enemy's turn and stop them from doing something. I could Soulburst in their shooting phase because they've killed. It was just ridiculous, and it was complex. And I think, although it's still mildly complicated because you have to remember if they have Soulburst, because but they've simplified it in the sense that your whole army gets it if something's died and you get to fight first, or if you already get to fight first you get +1 to hit. That's cool, and they've supported that change to Soulburst with some decent stratagems, some decent warlord traits, some decent psychic powers. That a lot of them are melee buffs, a lot of them are melee focused, so you can kind of narratively really, really power a unit up as it finds its strength from the deaths of the souls around it, and then hit something like an absolute freight train, perhaps kill, destroy, maim, whatever you're going to do, and then you need to sort of have that sort of combination work again, I suppose, for a different unit later on. Overall, I just think there's so much better than they ever were before in terms of they're no longer a mono sort of bit, because you know what you saw. You knew what you saw in Ynnari previously, right? Reapers, Doom, Shining Spears. It was just a bore fest, and it was all range soul bursting stuff, and it just wasn't that great. It was crap, and you could do stuff in the opponent's turn to neuter what he was trying to do, or stop him from interacting in some way, or shoot him in his turn if you wanted to. And when you could do that with things like Dark Reapers, it was just ridiculous. And when you then combine that with being able to legally soup within a detachment and therefore doom something with a seer and then fire at it with 3 Ravagers and such like, it was ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So for me personally, and I know some people don't agree with me, and I know I'm probably going to get some form of rage in the comments about how hard they've hit Ynnari with the nerf bat. Good job, GW, because I still think, honestly, they're very playable. Harlequins were playable as they were, and now they've got some extra tricks and toys should they want to, and they can still legally ally within an army, not detachment but army, with things like Craftworld Eldar and Drakari in events that only allow single faction because they become Ynnari. So you can still do that. You have to have separate detachments but you still can do that. So they still can. So people like Harlequins that missed things in the past. So Harlequins, for me, for example, could do with decent range support. So you can take a Harlequin battalion now of troops and transports and then go, well, I don't want to fill the rest of my points with the crappy Harlequin heavy supports. And I don't really want the Harlequin bikes, for whatever reason it might be. So what I could do instead is I could take a spearhead of Craftworld Eldar, and I can put in there Dark Reapers and a Farsi, and I don't have to have Ynnari character in there, etc. And then I can have some ranged firepower, a couple of fire prisms perhaps. I can have some ranged firepower, make the whole detachment Ynnari because I've included the Visarch, and you still manage to strengthen some of Harlequin's weakness, because that's one of the things that Soup does, right? Strengthens weaknesses. But you don't get all that broken crap with Doom and Stratagems and Psychic Powers and Relics and all that rubbish. They've got rid of all that. So I still think that armies like Harlequins are benefiting. The armies that aren't benefiting are the ones that are already super strong anyway. So Doom combos with Reapers and Guide combos with Reapers that were already really, really strong are now gaining no bonus from being Ynnari, and that's exactly what should have happened. If you've already got a strong build, and we're talking about a Latok Hemlocks or a Latok Crimson Hunters or Shining Spears. Shining Spears are a bit different, I suppose. They were only good because of Ynnari, but they were supported in detachments that included other stuff. But then you've got Reapers with Doom and Guide Seers and all that kind of stuff that's already really good. You don't need another set of rules to make them even stronger. You don't. So what GW have done is those units are now basically not affected at all by being Ynnari. So they might as well remain their original craft world. Which is perfect. That's exactly what should happen. And some of the stuff you didn't see as often or as strong in competitive builds, like perhaps Harlequins, perhaps Banshees, they've got the buff, they've got the bonuses from being Ynnari. They've got the extra tricks up the sleeve, the extra relics, traits, stratagems, abilities to make them hit harder, more attacks, more chances of wounding. They're the ones that have really benefited, and they're the ones that needed to benefit. Saying that they need to benefit perhaps is a little bit. Maybe that's a little bit unfair, because Craftworld Eldar are in a strong place, for example. Dracaria are in a strong place, for example. They're both already quite strong Codex builds. Harlequins perhaps not so much. I think, honestly, I think the Harlequins from the Ynnari release are going to be the faction out of the three that, in my opinion, benefit the most. Already a combat-focused army, predominantly. Yes, they can hit like a train with fusion pistols. They do have some decent range firepower with haywire guns on their jet bikes, but still predominantly supposed to be a melee-focused army, and they are the ones that probably, therefore, in my honest opinion, will benefit the most from this build. I like the idea. Points-wise, this will probably never happen, but I like the idea, for example, of a foot-based list. So this is my initial thoughts. I'm going to get excited about this. My initial thoughts about this release is a foot-based list at 1750 points that's filled with Harlequin troop choices, some characters spattered about, and Ghost Warriors from the Eldar, so Wraith Blades and stuff like that from the Eldar. So it is an army of the dead and the Quins that come across, because they're all stuff that... And Banshees, I think Banshees will be really cool in these as well, because you put all that together and the Quins and the Banshees are racing across really quite quickly, and the Wraith supports are following up. They're a bit slow, but I'm sure there's things that we could probably look at doing to increase their maneuverability. Maybe a couple of Wave Serpents, because you can chuck them in there as well, I suppose. Wave Serpents, they're hitting on 5 in combats, by the way. Whoop! But you see what I mean? You have... So one of the things with Harlequins at the moment is you put them on the ground, target priority is quite easy, really. But if you put them on the ground and had Wave Serpents full of Wraith Blades, target priority is not so easy anymore. I think there's some really cool combos. That's the sort of army that I like the idea of now. And that doesn't involve Reapers and Hemlocks and Wave and Crimson Hunters and stuff like that, and certainly doesn't involve Eldrad and people. Although that does bug me, because fluff-wise it's wrong. Because Eldrad was a massive part of the Ynnari fluff. But I certainly think that as a balanced faction, or as a faction now, GW have done an amazing job of making them more balanced. And I don't think now it's going to be such an automatic, oh God, you're playing Ynnari, here goes loads of fun. Because I just don't think people have now got that ability to be that disgustingly cheesy with Ynnari. It's interesting. There's a couple of tricks I think they've missed. So, for example, the old Soul Burst mechanic from Strength from Death basically related to the fact that they gained this extra power from something dying and being destroyed around them, and yet they're one of the only factions that doesn't have a stratagem that allows them to fight twice in the fight phase, which is interesting. So they've got all this stuff that around them being good in melee, and most armies have a 3 command point stratagem that allows that particular unit to fight twice in the fight phase, and they don't. And they don't have it for characters to fight again when they die, like only in Death to the Duty End, for example. So they had the ability there to take some of the little sort of old Soul Burst nuances and put them into 2-3 command point stratagems to allow them to still have the option, but it would cost you command points and you wouldn't want to do it that frequently. And I think they missed a trick there, because that would have been narrative still and would have worked quite nicely. And because it's a melee thing, where you get to fight again, I don't find it that broken. Overall, though, GW, I think, great job. It'll be really interesting to hear what you guys think, especially the regulars who watch a lot of these sit and talks. Feel free to drop comments below on YouTube and let me know what you think of the Ynnari buffs, and I'll try and chat to you, because I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens now. If you like the idea of Ynnari, then obviously head over to eBay, because there'll be loads of Ynnari armies on eBay now, especially if you like Shining Spitters and Dark Reapers. Loads of them. But yeah, I think they've done a great job. The second the leaks came out today, I was a bit nervous to read them, because I was like, oh god, what we're going to see, because we'd heard the rumour 2 days ago of the change to Soul Bus, which just turned out to be true, and I was very concerned that the Stratagems, Warlord traits, Relics, Psychic powers were going to potentially turbo break them again. Let's be honest, first turn charging strong Shining Spears, for example, which was an old Ynnari stratagem, or an old Ynnari strategy, I should say, is still on the cards. You can still do it, but it won't hit as hard. You won't disappear so quickly your opponent can't fight back, and it will cost you a little bit more in command points. So you can still do it. If you want to do that trick, you can still do it. They haven't invalidated your Shining Spears. You can still do that exact trick. What you can't do is run away before they get a chance to hit you back. So you need to make sure you kill whatever the hell you're in combat with. And it costs you 2 command points rather than 1 to advance and charge. But you can still do the trick. So I'm really happy with it. Like, really happy with it. I think it's amazing. I think removing the ability to soup things like Doom to be able to affect Drakari units and Eldar units and Harlequins units all in a single faction that was legally allowed in a single faction tournament, removing that is the best thing they've done. It's interesting. It makes me wonder about how they potentially could fix other soups. We've talked a lot about soups, but it makes me wonder about how they could fix other soups. And I wonder now if when we're getting towards the end of Codex releases, and we've got almost every faction out bar a couple, so obviously waiting for a few other factions, maybe Inquisition, maybe Sisters of Battle and stuff like that. It makes me wonder if this is something that could potentially be a precedent for future codexes. When I say codexes, I mean kind of indexes. So how about this? How about, rather than we destroy soup, or we restrict command points, or we restrict stratagems, or we restrict this, or we restrict blah, 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 and all the other ideas that I've come up with. So I want to scrap that now. I want to wipe all that off the table. And say, let's not do that. How about this? How about instead GW release a index in a White Dwarf in 6 months' time? I don't know, but in 6 months' time. They release an index within White Dwarf, and if you choose this index and you want to run this index, you can choose to be an Imperium detachment, and you replace your keywords like Ynnari with Imperium, for example, or something akin to that, right? And therefore, you lose the access to the Knight traits and stratagems and the Guard traits and stratagems and the Space Marine traits and stratagems, and instead you get access to the Imperium traits and stratagems. Now, this is borderline how it works on Age of Sigmar already. So if you go for a Grand Alliance detachment or a Grand Alliance army instead of a specific Stormcast Eternals army, you get access to different benefits and abilities for your army. So Sigmar kind of has already set a precedent for this. Some people chucked this suggestion at me in one of my previous videos about how maybe take a book out of Sigmar and do something similar, and that's kind of what I'm saying. So instead of keep bombarding us with new codex updates, maybe go, hang on a minute, we've done Space Marines, we've done Imperial Guard, we've done Imperial Knights, we've done Admech. We don't need to do them all together again. What's the point? Maybe some of them do need some rework. I think Space Marines, for example, do need a rework. But instead of keep releasing fresh codexes or nerf batting stuff and changing the way stratagems interact, which can lead to complexity that can confuse people because indexes and stuff, and then they get overwritten by FAQs and they get overwritten by the blah, blah, and it becomes a mess, and you don't know where your hell your rules are coming from. And if you owned a book that came out 6 months ago, etc., etc., etc. So how about instead of saying, well, if you've got this detachment, you lose this buff and you gain that bonus, just bring out an index that says you can now take an army legally that has a detachment of Space Marines and a detachment of Imperial Guard and a detachment of Imperial Knights. You can do that. But what happens is this index now takes over, and you lose perhaps your Imperial Guard keyword or your Astra Militarum keyword, and you lose your Blood Angels keyword, and you lose your Knight Crest keyword, and you gain this keyword, whatever it looks like. I'm going to use Imperium, but I know they already have the Imperium keyword, so this wouldn't be the most ideal. But you gain the mixed Imperium keyword, for example. Therefore, because you have the mixed Imperium keyword, you now gain access to these 6 new Warlord traits, these 6 new Relics, these 6 new Nice Psychic powers, and this 2 pages of Stratagems. You lose your Call's Wrath Knight Castellan, and you lose your Death Visions of Sanguinius, Blood Angel Smash Captain, and you lose your etc, etc, etc. But instead, you still gain stratagems, you still have warlord traits, you still have relics. But what you're doing is you're basically still restricting at that point every single person who plays the game. You're restricting them to a single set of stratagems, a single set of warlord traits, a single set of relics. But so my suggestion previously was that maybe your Warlord is the only book you can use. That's what me and Mikey P spoke about. I think it might have been last week. Maybe your Warlord is the only book you can use, right? But what that maybe meant was, say you said your Knight Castellan was your Warlord, potentially 70-odd%, 60-odd% of the points of your army wouldn't be able to interact with Warlord traits, relics, or stratagems. This fix, so basically applying the new Ynnari index rule to Imperium, to Chaos, this fix would still allow your whole army to interact with stratagems, to interact with warlord traits, to interact with relics, but they're just different to what would normally be in the codex. So not only does it increase variation and variety, you'll have different lists that will look different. It removes the brokenness of Soup having access to 3 different books and it only gives them 1. It allows your whole army to all interact and all play, which increases your enjoyment and fun and means that I'm not going, I'm taking it as a Soup battery, but I can't do anything with it because I don't get access to my normal stuff. I think now, on my personal opinion, this is the best fix that GW could employ. And I think it also does things like drive sales of White Dwarf, right? I'm not saying it's the best, most smoothest fix. I've only thought about this today. So there's other ways it could work. But I just think that this is something that there's very few people out there that I know of that doesn't want a fix to Soup of some sort. GW have clearly shown they don't necessarily want to fix Soup too much and remove Soup from the game because they sell models and they clearly like Soup. From a narrative perspective, and from a narrative perspective, Soup is good. I like it, but this potentially gives you the opportunity to allow Soup the way GW want to allow Soup, and balance it a little bit more, and increase variety and variation in the game. None of which are a bad thing. There's been a comment already from Tom at Sierp who says works for Ynnari, but too many Imperial factions. I 100% agree with you. There's a lot of Imperial factions, and it would be difficult to get it spot on, but if you're gonna do an Imperium version of the Ynnari one, maybe you do it slightly differently. Maybe the Imperium version has 8 warlord traits, 8 relics, 2.5 pages of stratagems. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm spitballing. But what I'm saying is, if you have that overruling faction rule and you still have everything that can interact with things like warlord traits, relics, etc., for me it just makes more sense. I think it just works better as the Ynnari fix to the Drukhari, Craftworld Eldar, and Harlequin Soup. Could be wrong. Right, some other comments in the chat quickly. What are your thoughts on Assassins and Forge World Relics? I'm not going to go into Forge World and how that interacts. Assassins, I thought they were horrifically broken. Went to into the Hellstorm 2. Assassins were absolutely everywhere. They don't break the game that much. I just dislike that ability to customize on the spot to what you're playing, where other armies don't have that because you normally have to at events declare warlord traits, relics, etc. before the game starts. So I'm not a fan of them that way, but I think they're fluffy the way they work. The other solution is to give a mono-faction 400 points of allies to give them Imperium stuff without access to any relics, warlord traits. Yeah, Scrivo, I think that's kind of how Age of Sigmar works. I don't play Age of Sigmar, but I think that's kind of how it works. They restrict the number of points that you can take as allies, and you gain different types of benefits. But I don't know if that so he's just said exactly Age of Sigmar. Maybe it doesn't overcomplicate it. All I'm trying to think of is a way of applying essentially one book, one set of traits, one set of stratagems, one set of warlord traits, one set of relics, etc., to the whole army. And that way, whether you pick to be Imperium, or you pick to be Space Marines, or you pick to be Ynnari, or you pick to be Necrons, everybody is operating from one book. So no one has got access to 3 different sets of relics. No one has got access to 3 different sets of stratagems. Everyone's using one book. Whether you choose to take the Imperium keyword, say Crusader, which has been suggested, which I think is an excellent name for the Imperium mixed faction, or they choose to take the Despoilers, for example, for Chaos with demons, etc., or they choose to take Ynnari, or they choose to take Craftword Eldar, or they choose to take Custodes. Whatever they choose, they're only operating from one book. I don't know how well that works as a solution. Like I said, on the fly today, came up with that, was thinking on the camera about how Ynnari's working. But let me know what you think, again, as to whether you think this Ynnari fix is good and elegant and impressive, and actually maybe you'd like to see them try and do the same with other soup issues, because I now think potentially we're at a point in 40k where they've fixed the Ynnari soup problem and we still have the Imperium soup problem, because I honestly think this is a good fix to Ynnari. There are people out there that have suggested that it's a worse fix to like, it's so bad that you just won't see them at all. I don't think that's true. I think we're still going to see Ynnari. I think they're still strong. I think Ynnari is still decent. I just think they're in a balanced place, and ultimately you may see less at tournaments because they're balanced and they're not as strong as, for example, Talos spam with Void Raven bombers, and therefore people that maybe were playing Ynnari before because simply of how strong they were will now go across to something like that. So from that perspective, you'll see less, but the most competitive players in the game will go and find the most competitive lists, and that's what they'll play. That's just the nature of the beast. And ultimately, to some degree, we should thank them because they often find lots of problems with the game as well. So there we go. That's that. That's basically my thoughts on Ynnari and how I actually think this could be a really elegant and influential fix for other super type lists. I've told you all about all the new stuff as I've seen it. I'm going to get this video up ASAP on YouTube, and be careful not to try and upset Twitch, just because I think it's important that people see this stuff, because I know a lot of guys in the chat tonight didn't know all the new rules for Ynnari. Interesting times, because it's nowhere near as cheesy or broken as I kind of expected GW to balls this up, and I kind of expected the Ynnari drop to still be very powerful. I was genuinely, honestly surprised when they changed the way Strength from Death worked so drastically, and even more surprised that each detachment now essentially has to be a mono faction within a Ynnari army. So good job, GW. I think that was excellent, and I'm a massive fan. That's perfect. So let me know what you think. Let me know whether you think you're going to use them if you were using them before, or if you think they're now going to hit eBay. Let me know if you're now more tempted by them because they're a little bit more down the narrative route. Let me know if it pisses you off like it does me that some of the narrative stuff's been removed, i.e. Eldrad in your Ynnari army. Eldrad's powerful. It's not why I want him there. It's because he was part of the birth of Unneed. But let me know what you think. And like I said, let me know what you think of the potential super fix that we might see GW do in the future with White Dwarfs if they watch this video and listen to me. Anyway, I'm going to kill it because I've been working all weekend and I'm absolutely knackered, and I've got to start getting ready to move house tomorrow, which we're doing soon. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video where we talk about Ynnari. Originally I was going to talk about just what I wanted to see, and I'm very lucky that they gave me all the leaks. We could just talk about what's actually happened. It's interesting. Darren's just said this, and I was about to touch on it anyway. It's interesting now that I think, conversely to you'll see less of them at tournaments, you'll see maybe more of them on narrative lists and maybe even battle reports because they're less broken. So I was always, if someone was to come to me on Warhammer and say, I want to play a game on the channel, yeah, cool, what you bringing? Ynnari. A little part of me would have gone, because you probably would get some hate on the channel for bringing Ynnari. With the new index rules, there would be less of that sort of avoidance of trying to put them on the channel. So Darren has got some gorgeously painted Eldar stuff, including the Ynnari characters and Harlequins. Now if he came and said, I want to bring Ynnari, yeah, crack on. In fact, Darren, you're booked in a couple of weeks. Perhaps if the index is out by then, perhaps we can chuck a Ynnari list together that's fun and get them on the channel. So that could be cool. Let me know what you think. Anyway, if you've enjoyed watching this, we have a big back catalogue of Chatter from the Voxes. Normally I am joined by co-hosts Mikey Brom and Mikey P. They're not here today, as I've said, but normally I am joined by them, so you can go check them out and have a look through those and realise how much absolute crap we waffle. We also do battle reports on the channel. At the moment they're coming out every 2 weeks on a Thursday or Friday, and I'm trying to keep that up, but we are about to move the studio. We might miss one battle report in a month, and then we'd have to pick up the speed again, just because what needs to happen is we need to make sure we keep putting battle reports on deploymentzone.tv. And once we talk about that, it's across the top of the screen, www.deploymentzone.tv. Check that out for our battle report every single Tuesday. One from me, next week one from Winters, week after one from me, next week one from Winters, and that's how it goes for the whole of the year. We are coming up to our first birthday. So we are very close to May, and then June the 1st is the first birthday of deploymentzone.tv, and at that point we had been going for a whole year. So check out deploymentzone.tv. It's amazing. More importantly, you've seen many people chatting on the side of the screen throughout the whole of this podcast. If you're watching on YouTube or Twitch, most of those guys are patrons of the channel, if not almost all of them, and they will tell you on the screen right now that it is an awesome community, to be part of. So if you want to come and join us on Patreon, there's a link below in YouTube. There's a link below on Twitch, and you can come and be a patron for as little as $2 a month and be part of our Discord, and it is absolute carnage in there. There is so much hobby, and it's so impressive. So yeah, if you want to become a channel patron, come and join us. You get to join in what is essentially a 24/7 podcast, basically, because we're just always talking hobby all the time. So feel free to come and join us in Discord. And people share images, and people organise games with each other, and they organise events and meets and stuff like that. It's an amazing community to be part of. I really cannot do it credit just by talking about it here. You have to come and experience it from yourself. And most people that come and experience it stay. So there you go. I think I covered everything, I believe. I think I'm quite happy. So for those of you watching on YouTube, we're about to say goodbye. For those of you on Twitch, we'll have a chat for 5 more minutes and we'll go and raid someone else. But yeah, thank you very much for watching this. A big shout out goes to everybody who's joined us in the chat tonight. Thank you very much for listening to me go on and on my own. A huge thank you to all our current Patreons. You guys are all awesome, and a massive shout out to Element Games, our sponsors, because they're amazing and they send us lots of stuff and help us along our merry way. If you're watching on YouTube and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. We are racing to 10,000 subscribers for our second birthday as a YouTube channel, and that'd be really cool if we could hit that goal before, I think it's mid to late July. Everything. That's all of it. I've covered everything. I've done everything. I've said everything. Now we're going to chat rubbish for the next half an hour. And if you want to be involved in that, come and find us on Twitch next week. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.